Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the movie Toy Story 5, and in the second half, I'm going to review Disclosure Day. Both of these are actually some of my most anticipated movies of the whole summer, so I'm very excited to talk about both of them. A little late to these films, but I still want to make sure I talk about them. Starting off with Toy Story, I thought that a lot of those other movies before the fifth one are just some all-timer films. I mean, you have Toy Story 1 and 2, which are fantastic. They're some of the most influential animated movies ever, if we're being honest. I mean, I think some of those films really changed the game, especially Toy Story 1 was like the first, or one of the first major computer-generated films for animation, and that just like completely changed the way we see animation today. Just evolved everything. Toy Story 2, I think, is an even better film than Toy Story 1, which is already great. Toy Story 2, I would say, is actually like a 5-star movie. Like, it's a perfect masterpiece. Over the years, it just gets better and better for me. It's hilarious, it's heartwarming, it's touching, just everything you want in a movie. It's really great. And then I would say Toy Story 3 is a very good ending to the Andy trilogy, as a lot of people are kind of calling it. Should have maybe been the final Toy Story film, period. And I will say at the time when it came out, I did think it was the final Toy Story film, ever, but clearly money says otherwise. Even the people who made Toy Story 3 have actually said, like, they never intended it to be the finale. It just kind of fit a finale very well, and also it's the culmination of a trilogy, so it kind of just felt like something that should maybe be a finale. But Toy Story 3 is very good. I will say, maybe a little bit of an unpopular opinion. When I first saw it, it was my favorite of the three movies. Over time, now that I've rewatched it, I really only rewatched it once every few years. I watched it, right before Toy Story 5, and then I rewatched it also before Toy Story 4. And those last few times I watched it, I noticed, while I still did really like the movie, I actually think it's my least favorite of the three. Not sure why that is. Still, it's a great film. It was even nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars that year. But then Toy Story 4 was announced, and when I saw it, I was kind of mixed on it. The ending sent Woody away from the rest of the toys, and, for understandable reasons given the movie and, like, the arc he's going through. But I saw Toy Story 4 as, like, we didn't really think Toy Story 3 was, like, the perfect ending. We have a little more story to tell. This is kind of now the finale of the Toy Story movies. That's kind of how I saw it. Of like 4 is like the real ending that they have in mind, and they wanted to just tell more of Woody's story. Kind of like the idea is like Andy's story ended, but Woody's story still has more to tell, and that's kind of how I saw Toy Story 4. And I did really like Toy Story 4 the more I saw it. Like recently, like I've rewatched it a few more times. Like I think it's actually a really good movie. I actually might, it's hard to say. It's like very close to Toy Story 3 for me, actually. I just think it's a really funny movie. It's sort of a little bit lighter than 3, but also just as touching to me also. So it was very good. And then they announced, though, the perhaps inevitable Toy Story 5, and I was probably more open to the idea of a Toy Story 4 than most people were at the time. I was like, I'm curious to see where they go with that. But with the way 4 ended, especially, like, Toy Story 3 at least left a little room open, and they also had, like, those, Toy Story tunes, Toy Story, like, specials that they had every few years. So it wasn't like Toy Story really ended after 3, it was just like that was the last movie for the time. But then you had Toy Story 4, though, and I don't really see a way to continue the story with the way 4 ended. Like, it just felt like a real ending point. And anyway, though, they announced that Woody would return for this movie in Toy Story 5, and that made me even more nervous to watch it, because I was like, what was even the point of 4 if you're just going to bring back Woody anyway? Like, that doesn't really make sense. And I guess this movie's reply to that is that just because Woody said goodbye to the other toys doesn't mean he's never going to see them again. They're all still family, and I guess it's kind of an excuse to never end this franchise. It doesn't matter where the toys are, we can just have them reunite every so often for fun, and doesn't really matter. But that's what these movies are doing. Are they necessary? No. But can they do it? I guess, sure, why not? And it was nice to have Woody back again. I really enjoyed seeing Tom Hanks as Woody again. It was really nice. As for the movie itself, I actually have to say I really liked it. For all the reasons this movie has to not exist, and there are many, it surprisingly finds a lot of ways that it says it should exist and is actually better off that it exists. For one, this is a very Jesse-centric movie, not something that I really expected when this movie was announced. It became a little more clear as we saw some footage from the trailers, but for some that may not mean much, like just hearing it's a Jessie movie might not really do much for you, but she's definitely a character with more to explore, especially like rewatching Toy Story 2 and 3. Like, you really just see a lot of untapped potential for her character, and this movie finds ways to explore her character in new but satisfying ways that just really feels like nice payoff to everything that's been built up. And like, it's kind of funny, like in a weird way, it makes you kind of look back at these other movies and ask yourself, like, how have they not done this before? Like, how have they not explored Jesse's character like this in the past movies? And I mean, I get why, because, they're more focused on Woody and Buzz and Andy, and, even the last one, like, was a little bit more Bonnie. But anyway, it was just making me wonder, though, like, Jesse really hasn't had that much development since 2, and but it's really nice to have that for her now. Like, she really does get to shine in this movie in some really great ways. And we also get some nice commentary on technology and the way it has sort of changed the way kids grow up now. Lots of kids, especially in like nowadays, have, iPads and iPhones and stuff. And like, they're not really playing with toys in the traditional sense as much, or going outside. They're not like doing the normal kid things that I think a lot of people expect kids to do. And then I think began kind of with my generation. I mean, I'm 25, and tech was just kind of starting to become a thing as I was growing up, like in that way. I mean, obviously, technology has been coming around for a while, but not in that much of an explosive way. But it's really affecting kids the way they grow up, and these two ideas, really intersect, because Jessie is a character who was abandoned by her owner a long time ago, and now tech is forcing Bonnie to grow up a lot faster, which would render the toys useless. So Jessie as a character is very scared of going through that again, of just being abandoned and forgotten, and it's just a really scary thing to her. And this movie presents a lot of very frightening scenarios that I think will make any parent queasy for their kids, if they're raising them right now, with the way that technology is changing their kids and making them grow up faster than they should. And parents can't control what the technology is doing to them exactly, like, the way that kids are interacting on there. It's a very complex situation that I think, no one's really prepared for. And I think there's also just a lot of nuance in what this movie has to say about technology, too. It's not just an old man yelling at clouds, tech bad, toys good. It's saying, how can the idea of technology challenge good old-fashioned toys, but also how can they complement each other? And how can both of these things, coexist and help a kid in different ways? How can toys do one thing and tech do another, and both of them maybe actually, like, really contribute to something greater for the kid? And I think, both Jessie and Lily Pad are kind of the two leads in this movie as the protagonist and antagonist. Note how I didn't say villain, but definitely an antagonist, as both characters dislike the other and learn important lessons. And then you have Woody and Buzz still in this movie, with lesser roles, notably, than they've had before, and I think that was still fine. That was very enjoyable to watch them bicker and argue with each other in fun ways. That obviously never gets old. That's just part of what makes this franchise special. The other toys, on the other hand, are super sidelined. They're really more cameos than characters now, so if you've been wanting to see more of, like, the Potato Head, Slinky, Rex, some others, after having a fairly small role in Toy Story 4 compared to the other films, keep your expectations very low, because it's even less here, I would say. Doesn't, like, hinder the film much, but it is noticeable. I would have maybe liked a little more from them at some points. But I do think this is a very strong film. It's funny, it's entertaining, it's actually very moving too. Even some things I didn't expect to work, like this potty tech toy named Smarty Mouth, played by Conan O'Brien, were very funny. I do have a few criticisms with the film, and my main one is that there's this army of Buzz Lightyear toys that did end up contributing to the story by the end, but we spend a lot of time with them early on, including the opening scene, and it was easily the least interesting part of the movie for a little while. Like, even though we saw them in the marketing, I was just kind of like, where is this going exactly? Like, what are we doing here? I don't know. It just felt like a very like sideline subplot where you're just kind of like, I don't really get what's going on here, like what the point is. Again, it does contribute to something later, so it's not like it exists for no reason, but maybe it'll work better on rewatch now that I know where it's going. But it just felt like the part of the movie that they could have really just trimmed up the most. I also don't think this movie looks nearly as good as Toy Story 4. Like, the animation is great, of course, maybe even better than that film. But the lighting could have been a bit stronger. I mean, say what you will about Toy Story 4, like it or not, I think we can all admit it is the best looking Toy Story movie by miles. Just with the way the cinematography looks, the way the lighting is, and all that stuff. It's beautiful, beautiful looking movie. Toy Story 5 still looks very good, just not quite as good. And even though the jokes in here were decent, I didn't really find myself laughing all that hard at any of them. I mean, I think I would say like Toy Story 1 and 2, and even 4 especially, like I really laughed very hard in all of those movies. Even Toy Story 3 has a few of those, I guess. I would say this is like the least funny Toy Story movie to me, but not to say that it's not funny, just to say that I didn't laugh very hard at it. And I'll have to see the movie again to say how this really ranks among the other Toy Story movies for me. Right now, I would say it's towards the bottom. You know, I think there's a good chance it's even my least favorite, but that's also like saying you got a silver medal at the Olympics. Like, it's still a great award. It's still a great movie, and I think a lot of people will have a great time with the film. Even the naysayers of Toy Story 4 will probably enjoy this because it does fix some of the problems that movie had for some people. Sure, it's unnecessary. Does this movie need to exist? No. But I think if you keep an open mind, you'll be happy that it does. So I'm going to give Toy Story 5 a B+. Alright, and next up is Disclosure Day. So this is the GOAT, Steven Spielberg's newest film. He's made quite a few movies about aliens, but he claims that this is like the final movie in his trilogy about aliens on Earth. And this movie basically follows a couple of random people whose stories intersect when they realize that aliens are in fact real and here on Earth, and explores these ideas of, you know, should that information be disclosed to the public and what good and bad would come from that. It explores a lot of different ways, like how would religion be impacted by it? How would, you know, society react to it? Would, you know, things go mad? And this is also a world in which it's on the brink of like World War III, so society's already a bit unsteady. It's kind of like the idea this movie's presenting is like, would revealing that aliens are on Earth tip the scale and just send society into collapse and chaos and destruction, or would it maybe heal society? And that's kind of, you know, the real question this movie's asking. And like, you know, even if it does have these massive ramifications, isn't it the public's right to know that information? It has so many great ideas, very fascinating ideas that make you think and make you just kind of want to explore that idea more. And I think these are all great ideas Spielberg explores because it's not even entirely a fictional concept. I mean, sure, like, maybe to some extent it is, but I think we can all say, like, there probably is other life out there. I mean, it's statistically very, like, improbable that there wouldn't be. Like, if we exist on Earth, like, how could there not be other life out there? And that's what Spielberg's so, you know, enamored by with all these alien movies. And if we did find out they had life quietly and secretly among us, wouldn't we want to know that? And what would happen if that information was out there? So I'll cut right to the chase, though. I think this is a pretty good movie, albeit one with a lot of flaws. For most filmmakers, this would be a solid film with a lot of craft behind it. Coming from Spielberg, you know, the goat of all goats, it is a little disappointing. But you can still tell it's made by someone who cares deeply about what he does. And this movie has so many creative choices and shots that very few people in Hollywood would do like this and can do like this. So it's very refreshing to get a movie with this much stylistic flair and, you know, optimism and just creativity behind it, and that would be as well thought out as this. There are a lot of older directors, I won't say who have definitely become a bit washed and aren't nearly as good as they once were. I don't really think that's the case with Spielberg. I mean, he's just someone who had an incredible run of movies. He's my favorite director, by the way. And his movies are way more iconic and well acclaimed than most would have in a lifetime. I mean, just that streak he had in like the 90s, crazy. I mean, he literally did Jurassic Park and Schindler's List the same year. And I mean, look, like Schindler's List may be like his best film, arguably, but I think like Jurassic Park is my favorite. It's just that he just had such a historic run of movies. And sure, his latest works, everything he's made in like the 2010s, let's say, like early 2010s, it's not among his best, but they're still very good, and you can tell he puts all his effort into them. And he does still have some great films every now and then. I mean, even just this decade, West Side Story and The Fabelmans were very good, if not excellent. The Fabelmans in particular may even be among my favorites of his. I mean, partly that's because of just like the nature of it, of just being about movies and about him. But I thought it was such a genuine biopic sort of movie, and really a beautiful film. But Disclosure Day isn't getting the best reception among general audiences, and I think that's because it's not exactly what was promised from the trailers. The marketing kind of promised a more action-packed chase movie that would be a lot larger in scale than it was. In reality, this is still a chase movie, but it's a fairly grounded one and doesn't have much in the way of aliens or action, so keep expectations in check when you watch it. I think the performances here are all good. Josh O'Connor, Coleman Domingo, Wyatt Russell, Eve Hewson, and Colin Firth do a nice job here. I also have to say that this small actor in the movie, Courtney Grace, who plays a news anchor in the film, was really fantastic. I mean, in her limited time on screen, she completely blew me away. In a lot of ways, she actually does have some of the most memorable time on screen in the whole film. But even with her, I do have to say, like, the real standout in this movie is my favorite actress of all time, and that is Emily Blunt. She gives what may be her best performance ever, or at least one of them. She has to channel so many emotions and do a lot of it very quickly. Her character also has some weird quirks, and it's largely thanks to Blunt's range and talent that it feels pretty natural to me, and she makes it come across as, like, something that would happen. Like, it's not like... It doesn't feel as weird as it should be because it's coming from her. Like, she just does a really good job at conveying it. But on that note, I will say this movie is certainly weirder than I was expecting. There's one idea with changing how people see you and kind of the way you look to other people, and I thought the execution was kind of cheesy and off-putting. I think that, honestly, I mean, I love Spielberg. I think that choice may be more on him just because of how he executed it. It seemed like it was trying to be genuine, but it didn't work for me. It took me out of the film both times I saw it. And there's also a decent amount of times where characters just get away too easily from the bad guys, or things feel contrived for the sake of moving the plot forward some more. And I think that stuff's all on the script, written by David Koepp. And the interesting thing about him is that he has written great movies before. I mean, even the aforementioned Jurassic Park, which is, again, my favorite movie of all time. So he has the talent, clearly. But lately, he's been a bit more rocky, let's say. I think Disclosure Day shows just how hit or miss he can be. There are some scenes that are super well written and great, and I was like, yes, this is really good writing. And then you have others that are very cheesy and don't work quite as well, and you're like, this probably could have used a few more drafts. So there's also this MacGuffin with alien technology in the film that basically can do anything you put your mind to, but its limits aren't made too clear in the film, so it's hard to say exactly how it works. Like, you have an idea by the time the movie ends of like, okay, I think it can do this, but there's also like this limit it has, but also it's a little bit like unpredictable. It just, they needed to do a little bit more to kind of like show you how it works, so that way like you have a little more of an understanding of like what its limitations are. It's just kind of like a do anything stick. I don't know, it's kind of a major part of the movie. It works sometimes. It's something I'm a little more mixed on in the film. But there are things in the script that I do really admire. Like the first act just basically doesn't exist. It throws you right into the movie. There really is no first act because there's no setup at all. Like, and I thought that was really cool and got things moving very quickly. Like the movie starts and you just feel like you feel like you missed like 20, 30 minutes of the movie, but it does a really good job at catching you up. And I mean, you have to kind of pick it up for yourself. Like, the movie doesn't hand things to you. You have to just kind of pay attention and grasp what they're saying as it goes. But I really enjoyed that. Like, the last time I think that kind of happened in a movie was Superman last year, where it just, pushes you right into the action. And not to say that I think every movie should do that. I mean, I like a first act to just set the stage. But for this kind of movie where it's just a chase, I think it makes things feel a little more snappy. It makes things feel a little more energetic. So that was nice, just especially as it begins. But the pacing is a bit of a weak point in this movie too, because it does feel a bit overlong. It's about 2.5 hours. You can definitely feel that. There's absolutely stuff that could have been cut in this movie to save time. And as much as I enjoyed Wyatt Russell in this movie, you definitely could have removed him from the vast majority of his scenes, and virtually nothing would have changed. And then my final big complaint here is that the way things get resolved with the villain in the movie was pretty unsatisfying and confusing to me. I didn't fully get what they were going for with like the way things wrapped up with it, and I would have liked a little more clarification. It just felt a little distracting to me, and I was like, and I watched it twice. Both times I was like, I don't really get what the point of this is, so that was a little bit disappointing there. But as a whole, I would say this is a good movie that I enjoyed watching. I can admit it's a bit disappointing and it could have been better than it is, but I also do still admire the movie for what it is, and it has some great stuff in it for sure. I just really enjoy seeing anything by Steven Spielberg. Even if it's not his best work, you can still tell he put everything, is all into it. You can just feel the passion he has for what he's doing. And this is something, he's really been interested in for a long time. So it's nice that he got to make this movie and just kind of cap off his thoughts on aliens and life on Earth and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would say it's a pretty good movie. I think if the trailers didn't do much for you, you can probably wait to stream this one. But if you like Spielberg, you want to see what this movie has to say, you're curious about it, I would still say to give it a watch. You may not love it, but I think you'll still find that it has some stuff to offer. So yeah, I'm going to rate Disclosure Day a B. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.